Hello and welcome to the Reserve Funding Analyzer. In this video, I am going to be going over general data entry. My name is Steve Beisel and I'm the developer of this application. In a previous video, I covered the overall structure and the general introduction to the RFA. So this screen that you're looking at now should be familiar to you, as it is the default screen when you first start the application. Now, one thing you should do before you start any data entry is that you should clear the existing data from the workbook. In the way that the workbook is shipped, there is some sample data already in, and that needs to be cleared. There's a couple of ways you can clear the data. First, you can go to the User Controls button in the control panel, and there you'll see a Clear All User Data icon that you can click on. The other way is that if you're familiar with navigating in Excel using the Sheet tabs at the bottom, you can go to the Financial Data Sheet tab, and you will see a Clear All User Data button also on this sheet. Either one will work. Just click on the button. You'll get a confirmation message that you're about to clear the data. Click OK, and you'll get another confirmation message when the data has been cleared. That's it. Everything has been cleared now. Now, to start entering data into the workbook, you can start with either the financial data or the loan data or the reserve item data. I recommend starting with the reserve item data, as that is the most difficult to get. Now, to go to the reserve item data, you can either go to the button on the control panel to navigate directly to that sheet, but the amount of data that you can put in on the control panel is somewhat limited, so you're going to have to use the native Excel method of entering data. So I'm going to close the control panel at this time. Now, one thing I forgot to mention, and that is, before you start to enter data, it's a good idea to go to the financial data sheet and enter the current year. I'll explain why in just a moment. So I'm going to enter the current year as 2018. Now I'm going back to the reserve items, and I'll start to enter some data. Now, where do you get the reserve component inventory data? If you've had a reserve study done in the past, that inventory of your reserve components is probably still valid, and certainly any updates will be minor. If you've never had a reserve study done, it's a good idea to gather a group of individuals within your association to conduct that inventory. And of course, you can use past financial records of things you had to replace from time to time as a starting point. I'm going to just enter some information here just to show you the actual data entry. First, I'm going to enter a common exterior category item, and I'm going to call this Common Walls Repair. Now, you can enter the cost here as either the cost that it previously was incurred or a current estimate. I'm going to enter $7,500. And in this case, I'm going to say that the last time that the common walls were repaired was in 2008, with an estimated useful life of 15 years. Now, I need to enter what the cost basis is. Recall in my previous video that I explained that there is help text available scattered throughout the application. You can see under the cost basis as a yellow triangle, and clicking on the yellow triangle gives you a description of what the cost basis is. You can enter either the actual cost of the time that it was incurred, or you can enter the current estimate. If you enter the actual cost, then the useful life of the component will be utilized to then determine the inflation rate to bring it to the current year funding. If you enter the current estimate, then it's assumed that that estimate occurred in the current year, and therefore it will not apply any inflation. I'm going to enter the cost estimate as the actual cost that was incurred in 2008. And Then the current year funding, if you click on the help icon, it'll tell you that this only applies for cost items that are in the current year. I'll demonstrate that in just a moment. You then enter the quantity. This doesn't actually come into play in working out any financial calculations, but it's a good practice to enter what the current quantity and unit of measure is for your components, as it is very helpful in your reports. Now you'll notice in the gray fields here that we put in a useful life of 15 years with the last time it was serviced as in 2008. So it indicates that the remaining useful life is 5 years and the next year of service is 2023. Now the reason why the text is grayed out is because we're excluding it. If I click the exclude field, it'll change to include, the text goes to black, and then you can see the cost bars appearing in the graph right here. Now I mentioned, what if the current year of service was the actual year placed into service? So let's put in 2018. If I do that, you notice that the current year funding field turned pink. This is indicated that it's missing data. What data is missing is that you have to tell it, is the $7,500 cost already funded? In other words, do I need to account for this cost item in the current year, or is it unfunded? If I click unfunded, you'll notice that in 2018, a bar appeared which indicated that we have to account for $7,500 of cost in this year. If I go back and change this to already funded, you'll notice that that cost bar has disappeared. I'm going to change it back to 2008, and the already funded doesn't make any difference. What you put in this field, it'll be ignored. So I can just as easily delete it, and you'll notice that that field is changed from pink back to yellow again. In a similar fashion, you add all of your inventory items, your reserve component items, into this sheet. Now I'm going to take a quick break, and I'll come back when I have completed that. Okay, I'm back, and I have completed entering all of our reserve component inventory data. And you can see that the text is all grayed out on most of those items. So I'm going to click on this green button here to include all of those items into my inventory. The application then goes and highlights only those items where we've made entries. Now there's one field that I have yet to fill in, and that's our special projects field. So I'm going to enter that we have a special project that we're going to start in 2019, and that's to install some security cameras and a DVR server. The estimated cost is $12,500, and we're going to start this project in 2019, and I need to include it. So there, I've now completed all of my reserve components and special projects into the application. Now I want to bring up and show you this on the Privacy and Security tab under Security Cameras. You'll notice that we have an item here for security cameras and DVR server maintenance of $2,500, which will start in 2022 with a useful life of 3 years. This relates directly to the special project. So the special project is a one-time cost of $12,500 to start, or actually to take place in 2019, and then the maintenance of those security cameras will start in 2022 and will have an estimated useful life of 3 years. So it's an important thing to keep in mind. Okay, the next thing is to start to enter some financial data. So I'm going to restart the control panel, and the financial data is already highlighted here. So I can first click on Home and then go to Financial Data to go to that worksheet. And I'm going to move this over right close to the fields so that you can see that we can enter the financial data in either the control panel or directly onto the worksheet with the same effect. We can start here with entering the name. My HOA would be a good name. And I'm going to say we have 113 units. Now should see that as we enter data in the worksheet, the control panel gets updated at the same time. I'm going to enter a starting reserve balance here plus the other financial information, and we'll just put in here the same data actually that's in our sample data. We have a starting reserve balance of 165,000 and an interest on the reserve balance of, now you notice I entered 0.27. Now what I really want is 0.27%, not 27%. So that has to be entered with a 0 preceding it. So now it comes in at 0.27%. Current annual HOA dues results in an income of $65,000 a year. That grade cell indicates that it calculates to $575 per unit. I'm going to go over here and start to write in the current annual income in the control panel, $3,000. And the other income percent is a 0%. We don't have any interest earned on that. Current annual operational expenses of $60,000 and an inflation rate of 3%. Now I deliberately entered 3 to show you that in the control panel that indication is that that's a 300% inflation rate, which is not what we intended at all. So I'm going to go back here and enter 0.3, and now it comes in as 30%. So that's obviously wrong. So it is 0.03. 3% is the correct value that we'd like to see. We don't have any funds in our contingency account, and we don't really want to have a contingency account, or do we? You decide. Well, in our case, after thinking through it, I've decided that, yes, we'll have a 5% contingency account. Now, what kind of logic will we have? Well, there's no help on the control panel, but there's help right over here. And you have 2 options for the contingency fund. We can maintain it at a constant percent, in which case all contributions to the fund will be deposited and or withdrawn to maintain the constant percent. Option 2 is that we specify a minimum balance or a percent that we want to have, and it'll maintain that at a minimum, but it could be more. So I'm going to put in that we want a constant percent, and then we want to include it as part of our financial analysis. So that pretty much covers the general financial data. The other data is the annual dues data. And if I go to the annuals due, I have to move the control panel over a bit so you can see that area of the worksheet where that data is entered. First is the funding methodology. We get to choose a couple of different options. I'll let you read this at your convenience rather than go through it right now. The recommended option is to set it for cash flow and then set a percent threshold for the cash flow, and I'm going to enter 70%. Now, the rest of the data for funding options is typically surrounding the annual dues and special assessments and one-time incomes. So I'm going to leave that for the next video. But the only other data entry I want to show you is the loans sheet. So I'm going to go to the loans section here within the control panel, and I'm going to show you how in the control panel, we only have the name of the loan and whether to include it or exclude it. It's because there wasn't enough room to put all of the data entry for all of the loans here. So I'm just going to enter a loan here. I'm going to call this just give it some name, a bridge loan. And you'll notice that the name updated here. Now, we have to enter all the loan information right over here. So I'm going to enter that we had a $50,000 loan with an annual interest of 2.5%, which would have been nice to have. The term of the loan was 15 years, and the loan was origination in, let's give it 2010. Now, once I fill all the information out, you'll notice that those error conditions in the gray cells went ahead and cleared themselves. And we can either include or we can exclude that loan from the financial analysis. Now, the reason to have that is so that when we actually do the analysis, we can perform what-if functions to include or exclude a loan. In the case of a loan that already started in 2010, you really shouldn't be excluding it because that obviously results in payments. But let's say we were thinking about this bridge loan in 2019. So if I change it to 2019, now we can perform the what-if analysis to say, well, what if we didn't take out the loan? How would that affect our financial situation? Now, once you enter all of the loan information here, the loan payback data is all calculated in these gray cells, and then it is added to the operational expenses. So that pretty much covers the loan data. And that pretty much covers the general data entry that I wanted to go over with you today. And I invite you now to look at the next video, which I will be covering performing the actual financial analysis and doing some what-if studies. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.